So we have our box made, we have the ends in, we're making sure that we had those even at the top. If something happened in the process of that and they're not even, now before we put the hinge on is our opportunity to go back and file that even on that side there. Also, if you're unsatisfied with your box at this point, you haven't gotten so far that you can't turn around and correct some things with this. Alright, so I have gone ahead and cut my hinge and I've welded that on. So when we cut the hinge to length, we don't say, okay, well this is 7.5 inches long, I'm going to cut the 7.5 inches. We set it in the piece and we mark that with a Sharpie what that length is going to be. We lay that flat in the table shears and we go ahead and cut that off at that length. And then bring that back and put it on. Now, since putting this on, these welds are good. This last one, however, didn't accept very well. So I want to make sure that I go back and I do weld that again. So I am going to go back and put another weld in that spot there. I also went ahead and made my lid. One thing about making your lid is, we want to make sure that these two lines, here and here, sit to the outside of the box before we go ahead and bend this. Otherwise, it's not going to work. So when you get your box, your lid laid out, and you have your lines drawn for the tabs that are going to be on that box, before you cut out the corners, so that we can have 3 overlapping tabs there, put it on the box that you have and make sure it's going to fix. If it's not, we're not too far along that we can't fix that at this point here. Okay? So what has to happen now is I have to make sure that I have a good, even overhang of this lid on the box and that it looks good from the underside of this. I'm going to need to grab a Sharpie so I can put down some lines, orientation on this. So I'll grab my Sharpie out. And first I'm going to put this lid on how it would like to go. So if it's against, and by the way, the hinge went on the inside. You can see that inside it goes. And the barrel is facing out towards the back. Okay? I am going to go back and weld that when we get back to the water, but right now I want to lay out how this is supposed to look here. So I'm going to lay it out like that, and it just sits right against the barrel of the hinge on the top too. So when I put that down, I want to look at the underside, and I want to see that from left to right, I have even overlap. And right there looks pretty good. I also want to see that in the front, the overhang looks good. And that looks good right there. So I'm going to pinch that in that location. And if I look at how it's oriented to the hinge right now, I'm going to make a line here, because that's where the end of the hinge is there. And make a line there, because that's where the end of the hinge is there. And if you notice, from the barrel to this, we have a gap, and on this side we don't. So I'm going to draw a little line here, so I know where to put this, how to orient that when I put it back on again. Does that make sense? So now when it's off, I have lines here that I can use to get this so it's going to have an even overlap. Okay. I have glasses. I'm going to grab an apron because I'm going to use a resistant spot welder. Put my apron on. We'll walk back to the welder. I'll grab gloves. And I just want to get this thing set up. This welder's not been used, but if we've had 10 students before us using this, these copper tongs here are going to be hot, so you don't want to come in contact with them without gloves on. They're cold right now because this is the morning and it hasn't been used yet. I want to line those up how I want them to be, just like so. And then I'm going to go ahead and clamp it, so I'll weld one time in the middle. And I haven't forgotten that I still want to go back and do that last weld again, but I can do that later on. So now I have it clamped, it looks good. My lines look good. Come a little bit over, I guess, to there. And now the hand that I'm going to be holding the metal with, I want to have a glove on. In this hand, I can just use bare hand to trigger that. So I'm going to put one weld in the middle. One weld and then check it. Because with one weld, we still can get this off. I can still helicopter this thing, pivot it on that one weld, and that'll break the weld. And I can get a second chance of getting it right. But if I look at this now, the overhang on that front edge looks good, ends look good, okay? So I'm happy with that. So I will put on my other 4 welds. So I'll put 5 welds along this. And I'll also take this time right now to fix this weld.
What? You guys haven't seen Kirby by chance, have you?
We're in the middle of moving it. I have not. Okay, so there, that weld's good, and I'm going to go ahead and finish up the other 5. And I will put my button on here to hold this. I'm giving it time after each weld for the heat to sink in. So now this is going to be warm on the back side here. It's very thin metal, so it does dissipate pretty quickly. But now I have, and I can go ahead and, the welds I just put on there, I can actually, at this point, feel they're not real hot. But they do obviously get hot enough to fuse 2 pieces of steel together. So at one point they're extremely hot. You can see where my welds are there. I'm right on the top edge. Probably want to be a little bit closer to the middle there, but that's going to be fine. And that's the box.